This is David Toulis, and I argue for a local economy and the free market every day here. And I got a call last night at 12:30 in the morning. Jeanette was just coming upstairs to come to bed, and I had already been asleep for a couple hours, maybe 3 hours. I try to get to bed by 9. And
I'm not available at this time. If you leave a short message after the beep, I will get back with you as soon as possible. Thank you. God bless you.
Well, we're trying to reach...
Record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
This is David Toulis, and we're trying to reach Regina Ledford. And Mrs. Ledford called me last night at, as I say, 12:30. And my wife was upset that I was actually speaking with this woman who rang me in desperation. Not that I want to encourage people to do that, but I had given her my card. I often give my card to homeless people and people who beg money from me. I will give them my card and maybe something more valuable than that. But here's a woman who called. She was at the city council meeting when she pleaded with Darren Ledford and other members of the city council, Carol Burrs et al., to not pass an ordinance that banned panhandling, because now the activity in which she sometimes has to resort to obtain a little bit of cash in her purse has been turned into a crime. It has been turned into a crime, and in my reporting on her on that story, I made note that her plea to the council was really heart-wrenching. It was a heart-wrenching plea in which she almost was in tears, saying that she has a house and she's not homeless, but she sometimes has to beg to panhandle to make ends meet. And as she was explaining to me last night, my wife shushed me over into the walk-in closet so I could continue my conversation. She told me about her bills and how they were piling up, and she was in grave distress. And her name is Regina Ledford. So I hope maybe I can talk to her again and maybe give you some update, maybe have her come on the program. This is David Toulis, and I'm glad that you are giving me just a minute of your time. I do care about people, and my empathy for other people is weak, and it's weak because of the fall. As the Christian analysis would say, I'm a sinner, right? And so my empathy is weak, and my willingness to take on the guilt of my people and the guilt of my race is also weak. And I don't want to be someone who measures my guilt down to the inch, right? And say, well, this isn't my problem. It's not my fault. I didn't have anything to do with that. Whether it be the result of slavery or an economic system that essentially creates homelessness and creates difficulties about which people complain, including environmentalists. I was reading reading a very important website that deals with cities. And in fact, the Strong Towns website, there's going to be an event Thursday here in Chattanooga that I won't be able to make, but I got an email reminder of it. And the Strong Towns platform explains the marketplace and how the marketplace, when interrupted, cannot provide housing for the poor. The essay that I had pointed out to me was, it takes all types, and then in parentheses, of housing. If you have a city that prospers, you have to have housing for the poor. That means you have to have rundown sections of town. You have to have them. If you don't have slums in your city, you are not hospitable to the poor. Okay, you just got to get that into your white collar head. You, my listener, who think that everything should look nice, everything should look pretty, everything should look handsome, and it should all look the way you are. Right? You, my listener, have high standards, and you think your standards have to be reflected everywhere. And yet, I, David Toulis, your free market defender, your analyst for local economy and the free market, you're a blogger with the biggest pen, right? That's me, David Toulis, the smartest guy with a bow tie. I want to suggest that your hidebound ideas are against the poor. Your city council reps are against the poor and are intolerant of people who are diverse from them. To ban panhandling is to attack diversity itself, the very idea that you can have poor people and whose ways and mores are different, and vocabulary are different than yours, and who don't have ready access to credit or cash or bank accounts or liquid fungible assets like Bitcoin, right? These things are out of reach for them. And so people such as Regina Ledford, begging is something she resorts to make her bills, make her bills. And you can say, well, there's a woman who has a phone. She has an answering machine. Well, boy, she must be okay. Well, even beggars have cell phones. Even homeless people have cell phones. I've told you the story about the homeless man's lost cell phone that he just forgot here at our radio station to show you how far civilization has gone under the gospel, under the Christian gospel. The poorest people today are richer than the greatest monarchs of the 8th century. There's more wealth, more capacity, more technology in reach of a homeless beggar in Chattanooga than the greatest monarch would have in some eastern realm in the 7th or 10th century. And the smartphone is just a picture of that. The smartphone, we put it in a plastic bag, and then we left it outside for several days, hoping he would come by and get it. And we didn't want it to get ruined there, but he didn't come to get it. Even though I was passing down Hickson Pike one day on my way to an assignment, and I saw him with his formerly besotted partner, and I said, "Hey, you got your cell phone at the station?" And he knew who I was. He waved at me, and he said, "Okay." He shouted across the way there as I waited at the light, and at the Crazy Greek restaurant there here in Hickson. He didn't come to get it. So he's so wealthy as a beggar that he didn't think to come to get his cell phone, that he finally has lost track. I don't know where it is anymore. We're not, we have kind of disorder in our studios. We're trying to move ourselves, and that phone is lost. So the poor are better off than before, and they're richer than the mightiest monarchs of old, but they're still poor. And we have in Chattanooga, and in cities such as Nashville, we have very high-minded conceptions of how we're going to help them. Right, we're going to help them by having Mayor Andy Burke's affordable housing program. We're not going to have things that I propose, which is to say a marketplace solution where every poor person, every homeless person can invest in Chattanooga, invest in property ownership, and own land. And that is the your shantytown is my housing free trade zone concept. And that again is your shantytown is my housing free trade zone. And that's what we have to have, is a housing free trade zone. Because, as Strong Towns suggests in its essay by Nathaniel Barrett, as a small towns member and advocate in Dallas, you have to have housing that is suitable for people who have no income, right? And how can they have a house? How can they eventually own property? And that is what I do here on the David Tula Show. Explain how it's possible, even in Chattanooga. But guess what? It doesn't look nice. Guess what? It's a shanty town. Guess what? It's shabby. And yes, the color blue will dominate because you find tarpaulin in blue. And poor people, if they can get a hold of some used tarpaulin thrown out from a construction site that had thrown it over a work area during a rainstorm, but got some holes in it, so it had to be thrown out, and you rescue that. And if you double up on your tarps, you can have a waterproof house, a shanty town with a lot of blue and old tires and bricks and tossed out wood, blocks of wood and boards and sheets of wood and so on, all making a shanty town. That is what you have to have, and that is how you get started. That's how you get started. And you can have a very nice shanty town. They're dotted all around the world, but not in America. Not in America, where we have our very high and mighty idea of what apartment complexes should look like. The whole question about homelessness is in a story out of the USA Today Network in the newspaper, in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, about Nashville. There's a developer called Tony Giratana, and he's proposing a $25 million complex, a glass complex out of 30 stories high for the homeless. And guess $25 million. So guess what? Bonds are going to be floated for this. And he's the man who did 505 Cumberland on Church and others. And this housing complex for the poor is going to be on Church Street, downtown Nashville. $25 million. Now, where's the return going to be on that? Your tenants are people who can't pay. How is that rational? Unless, of course, we live in a fiat money, free money economy, which is what we have with suppressed interest rates. and no one really knows what the value of future dollars is. And so we have this gigantic bolt of optimism in every breast. And we're gonna have a bond-based housing complex for the homeless for $25 million. And we're going to make a return. I'm just amazed that this can be done. But the point I'm making is that affordable housing, is something I lowercase affordable housing, right? If you have affordable housing with a capital A and a capital H, as Mayor Burke does, well, that's obviously a program, and we have to have regulations, and we have to have set asides from builders, and so on. That does not help the poor. Okay, those kind of programs do not help the poor, and it's 800-8949, 800-8949. The candidate for mayor that was closest on this issue to the truth, as I would understand it to be, and have you understand it to be, is Chris Long, the architectural consultant, who was gracious enough to talk with me several times about this issue, and who had a proposal very proximate to mine. Your shanty town is my free trade housing, my housing free trade zone. He had a conception very close to that, and that's what we have to have. We have to have places where city seized land that's empty and useless and purposeless is given over to homeless people who if they stay there long enough in the same fixed location with the same hovel, right, the same shack, they will own the land after 2.5 years. That's the concept. They will have ownership stake. They'll have capital. If they sell their shanty and their small square plot of ground, they will be able to capitalize their move to the next town, right? These are people who want to keep moving. Many of them, they don't like commitments. They don't like to be tied down. Okay, well, we'll tie them down to ownership where they can secure their goods, right? They can secure their goods in their own little shacks, especially if they have use of wood and hinges. They can have doors and whatnot. They can make their own doors and make their own rooms, or small rooms, or they can rent them. They can rent them for services or by other means. Well, this is David Toulis, and the number is 800-8949. And Regina, I just mentioned Regina Ledford because, as I say, she had a heartbreaking appeal, almost in tears, that she sometimes had to beg to make ends meet. And so she's a picture in my mind. She's a picture. As Jeanette was telling me last night, David, just tell her to call tomorrow. Why are you talking to her? And so I finally heeded my beloved wife's suggestions that I come to bed. But guess what? I did not sleep last night. I did not sleep very well. And crowding around my mind were the things on my show today. And I do put a lot out for you, my listener. I want you to know that my empathy, my concern, the application of my intellect to the problems that you face are great. And I'm never stop thinking about you, my listener. What can I do for you? What kind of problem can I solve for you? I have solutions for you. And you might say, well, wow, what are these solutions? Well, one, for example, I have if you go to Nuganomics.com, you can read this story. Also, if you go to yournews.com, our chief sponsor, yournews.com, you can read a defense packet that I drafted for a young man who is facing criminal charges in East Ridge City Court. And I published my findings, if you will, my 2-page motion to dismiss. It's things like that where these are solutions to rumbling, low level, gnawing problems like city courts and traffic courts. These are a continual plague upon the poor, a plague upon the poor. City court meets today at 3:00 in East Ridge, and I'm not sure about Chattanooga. Frequent holdings of court in a small cash change strip mining operation by city governments around Tennessee. And now the question I want to get to in this moment here that I have with you, and I do thank you for the 5 minutes of time that you're giving me. Thank you so much. The name is David Toulis. Is Sheriff Jim Hammond's report on his Facebook page about being part of the COPS program. He is agreeing to have this national television movie making production in the county in his cars, making a report of encounters with the hapless public against whom the law is being enforced. Right. Some of these members of the public, no doubt, are involved in common law crimes, actual crimes. Many Many are not. Many are simply paper offenders, and they're going to be accused criminally of charges in which there cannot possibly be a respect of the statute in Tennessee law that requires mens rea, or guilty mind or guilty intent, to be shown. Look at the as I'm making a habit of it now, of looking at Chattanoogan.com, John Wilson's website, and making note of the bookings report. And I'm seeing, I'm trying to see a pattern in the bookings, because some of the crimes are merely paper crimes. They're not actual crimes. The question I have for Sheriff Jim Hammond is this: when the TV crew comes, will you be showing respect for the law on national television, and thereby selling our county and selling respect for law in Hamilton County? Or will the cops filming crew have repeated demonstrations that the department will continue to enforce Title 55, the transportation statute, in a way that is outside the scope? Now, the problem that we're looking at here is the imposition of criminal charges upon individual men and women who are not involved in transportation. They are private users of the road. They are using the road for pleasure, or for private necessaries and necessities, or for the exercise of other rights, such as the right to vote, which is being done today by many of them. Maybe not as many as people want, but by a few are voting today. By the right of free assembly, the right of religion, going to church, going to worship, going to the temple, to the mosque today, or any other day. Is that done under permission, or is that done freely as a matter of right? Now, I'm bringing up here what I would like to think is an important legal development, which is entirely outside the view of the press. Okay, the press has not covered this except for me, and they haven't covered this issue because I'm in the press and I'm bringing up this question. I'm asking the wrong question, and the question is: do you have, Sheriff Jim Hammond, authority to enforce Title 55, the transportation statute, against people who are not involved in transportation? And if you've been doing that for the past decades, following the tradition of others, will you continue to do so after having received from me administrative notice, Transportation Administrative Notice Tennessee? And that's what it's called. Just Google Transportation Administrative Notice, and you can come up with the document. It's 20 pages long, a simple review of all the definitions and statutes that apply to the use of cars and trucks. And as I told Sheriff Hammond in correspondence that you can read, it's online. I said, the High Court takes your view. The Supreme Court takes your view of enforcement. So does Governor Haslam and the General Assembly. But the statute itself and all the case law, even cases that are against this position, even they make it clear that there is a distinction between transportation and travel, and that you have authority only over transportation, and that the 1937-38 Tennessee driver's license statute, called the Commercial Driver's License Statute, when it went into effect, did not destroy any constitutionally guaranteed, God-given, inalienable, and inherent right. It didn't. And therefore, if it didn't, what are you doing arresting everybody on the road who doesn't have a license, or people who are not involved in transportation, who have a revoked license, suspended license, or no license, and you're charging them criminally when they're not involved in transportation, and you didn't make the slightest effort to find out if they were? Will the cops show indicate that you are continuing this practice? Or, Sheriff Hammond, will the cop show indicate to the viewer that you, in fact, are respecting the limits on your authority? We respect your authority, no doubt, as the chief law enforcement officer of our county and the most important man in our county. We respect you for that. But will you, Sheriff Jim Hammond, respect the scope of the statute? The scope, as notice makes clear, is only people involved in transportation. Transportation is the use of the public road for profit, vehicles for hire, cabs, truckers, Uber drivers, dump truck operators, haulers, everybody else. These are people who run cement trucks, people who carry goods, shipping for hire, Conant Transport. Those are all people involved in transportation pursuant to federal law, Title 49. And everybody else is not. No one else is under that statute, 55, if they're not under U.S. Code 49. So the question is, for Sheriff Jim Hammond, one that the listener will hold you to account for, or if not the listener, then maybe I will in his stead. Are you obeying the law? Are you obeying the scope of the statute? Or will you continue to harass private users such as Rudy Luis Rudy Soto Rodriguez, who today faces a hearing in city court, brought there by your deputy on his way to work. Will he be fined and accused and fined for exercising a right? This is a question, and the Cop Show will give the late answer. But maybe if you, my listener, keep tuned here to New York Radio, we'll find out the answer early. Okay? Maybe we'll find out tomorrow. But we need answers from the Sheriff's Department as well as the Department of Chief David Roddy. Are these questions annoying? I think the administration of our county safety and security agency thinks that they are. Do you think so? This is David Toulis, 800-8949, 800-8949.
3, 2, 1.